it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this fun fold card that I made for a wedding that I went to in Tennessee this past week. And when I make fun fold cards, I like to do a copy paper version of it first just to make sure my measurements are right. And I'm just showing you here, I wasn't sure how I was going to make the card fold, what exactly I was going to do with it, put it on a card base or use all of the gatefold pieces, but you'll see what I ended up doing. I'm showing you some pattern paper from the Die Cuts with a View Lace and Linen paper pack. Now this is about 10 years old, so you probably aren't going to be able to find this, but you can probably find something similar. And then I'm using the Colorado Craft Company's Lovely Legs Happy Forevering stamp set. We're going to start off with the card base, which is 4 by 10.5, and it's scored at 2 5/8 and 7 7/8. Essentially, we're scoring a quarter of the way from either side to create that gatefold card where they meet in the middle. I scored the lines and then I used my bone folder to burnish those score marks in. The next thing that we're going to do is work on the flaps. Now this is a piece of 4-inch square cardstock from that same paper pack, and we're going to cut it in half to create the flaps. So you see I'm lining up both of the points in the trimmer, and then I'm starting from the middle just so that I don't damage those corners. Take them in half, flip them over, and I scored at 1/4 inch. This is where I would have changed it. I probably would have done 4 1/4 or 4 1/2 inch squares just to have a little bit more stability on the back of that, because you see how thin that 1/4 inch is, and I just didn't think it was enough really to hold it on. But anyway, we went with it. And now I'm taking that piece, putting a little bit of the Honeybee Bee Creative glue on the back of it, and then folding it over. I'm using 110-pound cardstock, so this, I do put a lot of layers on this, and if I had to do it over again, I probably would have used the 65-pound paper because I did put so much into this, so added so much to it, and also used a larger size square to make those flaps, as well as scoring on the pattern side because I got some cracking when I did it this way. So those are the couple changes that I would have done if I was doing this card over again. But then both of those triangles are glued on, and there is the basis of the card. It's really not that difficult. It looks like it is a complicated card, but it is a lot easier than you think it'll be. Well, the next thing I wanted to do was to stamp their monogram. Now these stamps are both from Concord and 9th. The S is from all the letters, and then the B and the L are from the monogram sets, which I believe might be retired now. I stamped them on in the Versamark ink, which is that clear sticky ink, and then I'm using some Stewart Gold embossing powder to emboss these. I am using a paintbrush to take off the excess embossing powder because I don't have a embossing buddy or an embossing bag or anything like that. I just used a dryer sheet. Sometimes I use my Norwex cloth just to get a little bit of that static off of there, but it doesn't do as great of a job. So I do have to get one of them. I've seen a couple bags that I'm interested in, and I just have to purchase them. I just have been kind of lazy about that. I keep forgetting when I place orders for things that I need one. So next thing I'm going to do is take my heat gun and heat it up. I apologize, you can't really see it there. You just see a little bit of it. In another thing that we emboss, I'll actually show you a little bit more of the embossing because it's such a cool thing. If you've never seen embossing done and see it go from that dull matte to that shiny finish, it's really amazing. So that is the monogram that's going to go on the front of the card to kind of keep it together. It's going to be that very front focal piece on this card. There you go. I'm showing you that. And then I use some honeybee glue to glue those two pieces together. Oh, I'm sorry. But first I took some Concord and 9th ballet slippers around the edges. I wanted to add a little bit of pink to this just because there was pink in the rest of the card. I decided to go with pinks and browns and like that pearl because that's what the paper pack had, and some of the colors were pink and brown that were in their wedding invitation. They had some very bold colors, and I originally started off with that. I've actually done this card several times because I just wasn't loving anything that I was doing. It was one of those days where everything I did was wrong. So this is just a vintage photo, and this is this distress ink in vintage photos, just going around the edges of that just to give it a little bit of dimension. Tried to go around most of the edges with some distress ink just to add a little bit of character to it. So now I'm gluing it together, and then the front piece is ready. So now I'm showing you, I actually took a piece of paper from that same paper pack, and I apologize for the shaking of the camera. I really need to figure this out. I didn't realize it was that violently shaking. I just went around the edges with that distress ink with in vintage photo, and I'm going to glue this mat to the one side. Now don't glue it to both because then yours won't open, but I wanted to have a mat in there. I wanted to be able to keep both sides of the flap so that it did open up to the inside as well. Now I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the front so that I can put the monogram on. Like I said, this is it looks like it's a lot more complicated than it is, but it's more about the decorating of it. You could make this very simply by just doing some pattern papers, but I decided that I was going to add a lot to it, which is why the card ended up being so super thick. This is a border from one of the pattern papers, and it just had some pearls on it, and I thought it looked very, very pretty on the, just on this paper. I liked mixing the patterns on this because all of them went together. That's one good thing about paper packs. Generally, all of the patterns go together, so you kind of can't go wrong when you're picking stuff. Sometimes I have a hard time with picking pattern papers. Try saying that 5 times fast. Now, when I looked at it, I realized that the interior was plain. I didn't like the back sides of it, so I cut triangles that were basically the same size as that, glued them on the inside, and cut down any excess. And now we're going to be using that Colorado Craft Company stamp set to ink it up. We inked it up in Versamark ink or stamping it down, and we're going to heat emboss it. Now, I would recommend doing this way before you put the patterns on. I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I thought I had an idea, but I wasn't really sure. So this is all the fun part, the decorating part. And I just kind of I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I just decided to keep adding more and more and more. So now you're going to see, you can kind of see the image there. There was a little bit of black ink left on it when you put, what I found is when you put Versamark on top of it, it actually brings the ink off of the stamp. So if you're not getting a great impression, here's a great tip. If you're not getting a great impression of something that you've stamped in, say, black, and you feel like the ink isn't coming off, stamp it in Versamark if you're using a stamp platform, and it'll take the ink off of it. So now you can kind of see on the left it's that dull, and then on the right it becomes shiny as soon as it heats. So you can kind of see that happen. I love this. This is one of my favorite things about card making, is watching the heat embossing, because it's just such magic every time. Now I am just doing some interior pieces. I added a little bit too much brown to the side of that. And the way I decided to fix that is I have some Sea Salt Hero Arts ink, and I'm just going over the sides of it. You can see I was adding it to there just to try to take a little bit of that away. Put some on my finger, and it did dull it down a little bit. It didn't exactly come out how I wanted it, but it was close enough. So this is for the interior flaps. I wanted it to have that same pattern paper, and then make sure it went the exact same way, because that was important, because it's stripes. I wanted to make sure the stripes went the same way as the pattern paper inside. However, I just noticed that the pattern paper with their monogram on it goes the other way. But you can't win them all. So now I'm putting a square on the back of this triangular flap, just again to cover the back of it, because I didn't like the way that the white backs looked from that. I felt like it didn't look like it was finished. And this is where you can start to see that it's getting very, very thick. So I cut another piece of pattern paper down that has these little lace doilies on it, and decided to use them inside to decorate the inside, because I was going to also put the sentiment on there. So there you go. We have glued those down. And again, this is all from the same paper pack, so it kind of all went together. Oh, just trying to figure out how to fold this thing back up. There's a lot of folds to this. So there you go. And then we are going to move on to the interior. I did this a couple different times because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I ended up heat embossing it on the same pink paper as the flaps. I had also heat embossed it on that little paper that's on the right. I heat embossed it on there, but somehow it moved in my MISTI and it didn't come out good. So you can see the embossing powder from the first time that I attempted to do that. It did stamp really well on this pink paper, and then it tied the pink nicely into the inside of the card. So I'm going to wipe off the excess embossing powder, and then we are going to heat set it. Again, you'll see the magic of it drawing, going from the dull to the shiny. I also sometimes heat it from the back if it's getting warped. It also helps it not, the paper not warp as badly. So I'm going to cut that down, and then we are going to glue it to the inside of the card. I did mismeasure it a little bit. I actually cut it a little bit too short, so there's a little bit of the white showing through, but it's okay. It's handmade. It's not supposed to be perfect. I have to try to remember that sometimes I can be a perfectionist, and at one point I probably would have redone this part of the card, but like I said, this took so long to do because I kept changing my mind. I had actually done a very large monogram in different colors for the front of it, and that didn't work out. And it, like I said, I did a lot of things on this card multiple times. So I like the way it did turn out, but it did take me a really long time. Plus, I was also very indecisive about a lot of the things. So that was the Concord and 9th ballet slipper that I just went around the edges with, just direct ink pad to the top of the paper. And you can see there I have a little bit of white space, but it's okay. And then I had a little bit of ink on there. It was probably from a fingerprint, so I just took some white gel pen and got rid of that. And this is the card, all folded up. And that's pretty much it. I think that was the last thing that I did to it. So you can, oh, I'm sorry, I did the back too. Because at that point, I thought I was going to put it on a card base. That was my original idea. But then I realized, oh, it's so thick. So what I did was I took another piece of that pink lace paper and just put it on the back of that. So I know it's not the exact same color as that, but there are variations to it. So just cut away the excess. And that was, and I think I just went back in with my, yep, there you go, with the ballet slippers. Just went around the edges just to kind of make everything look seamless because it has a white core. Just trying to get rid of that because I think sometimes that makes it look distracting. But now you're going to see how the card opens. And then I wrote a message on the inside and then the back. I feel like it looks so much more finished with those back pieces all covered up. So it really isn't that difficult. I hope that you guys will give it a try. I had a lot of fun doing it, even though it was a super long process. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this kind of fun fold before and how successful you've been. Here are some pictures of the card and the different stages of it unfolding. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again real soon for another video.